Hello, this is the Sunday School outline for July 25th, 2021. I'm titling today's lesson, Suffer for Doing Right, the Lord is My Light. The lectionary readings for today are 2 Samuel 11, 1 through 15, 2 Kings 4, 43 through 44, Psalm 14, Psalm 145, 10 through 18, John 6, 1 through 21, and Ephesians 3, 14 through 21. I want to talk a little bit about Uriah. His story would be a good subject for an opera. He's considered a minor figure in the Bible, but he's one of those supposedly minor figures without whom nothing we have now would be like it is now. Without him, we wouldn't have Solomon, or Jesus for that matter, and that's pretty darn important. He is also an example of a person who suffers for doing the right thing. So what is his story? Well, he's always mentioned in the lists of David's mighty men. He's one of the 30, but not one of the 3. He's been following David since David has fled from Saul, or soon thereafter. He's elite, very elite. He may not be very spiritual, but he's a really physical, a very, very tough dude. He's married to the daughter of one of his cohorts, another one of the 30, Eliam. And Eliam is a son of Ahithophel. Ahithophel is the wisest man in all Israel. So Uriah isn't a nobody. He's someone important. He's on a first-name basis with the king. He's one of the 30 who answer directly to Joab, the most important military person in all of Israel, and he has a beautiful, beautiful wife, and maybe according to some but not all scholars, he has a couple of 3 sons, whose names, if he has them, are Shemiah, Shobab, and Nathan. Now, why would I agree with those scholars? Well, they're always mentioned as the list of sons of Bathsheba and David, just before Solomon, and they always put them in order. So the way it happens is later on, after Uriah died, David took his wife Bathsheba for his own wife, and her sons moved in with him. Not exactly like an adoption, but the sons of orphan sons who live with you are treated like your own children, kind of. They're always listed first, meaning they were born before Solomon. And so Solomon would have been Bathsheba's first son after she married David. David wanted Solomon to be king after him, and interestingly, Luke lists Nathan as Jesus' ancestor, while Matthew lists Solomon, but both came through Bathsheba. So, Uriah's name, Uriah, means the Lord is my light. He wasn't a foreigner, not with a name like that. He was a local boy who had made good. So let's go sideways and talk about what it means to be called a Hittite in King David's Jerusalem. The surname Hittite doesn't mean he immigrated from present-day Turkey, which is where the Hittites lived. It means his people had been in Canaan before the rest of the Jewish people showed up. There had been a lot of intercultural cross-pollination, and it would have been impossible to tell him from anybody else except by his name. Now, modern-day Bible readers, they get excited about the extermination orders in Deuteronomy. What they forget is that the book of Deuteronomy, was written at least 600 years after the fact. Archaeological records show that indeed there were multiple genocides during the time of Exodus and ages, and fact is they never stopped when they liked to kill people back then. Kill that village, take over its property. Fact is they're still doing it nowadays, I'm guessing. So let's take a look at some dates. Exodus happened about 1300 BC, give or take 300 years. Very quick web search on that. The books that we have that talk about the events in Exodus were edited into our present books about 700 BC, give or take another 300 years. So those are very quick web searches, and you don't have to agree with me. So, but David and his ilk at least didn't have the Pentateuch to read. They had something, but we don't quite know what it was. They, like us, were just muddling through, trying to do the best they could with their understanding. So if they didn't have the Pentateuch, they didn't miss it. But basically, Uriah was a local boy who had ancestors who were Hittite, and he was just a local boy. So there wasn't a whole lot to distinguish him, except he was successful. He's elite. And then he gets sent by his commander, Joab, to report to the king. Now, the king hears his report and tells him he's done well, and tells him to go home and have a good time at home. Now, Uriah might have been creeped out by the king telling him to go home and have sex with his wife, but more important to him is a besieging of the fortress at Rabbah. Rabbah is an important, wealthy, and very strong fortress. It's on the trade routes to what is now Iraq, between Jerusalem and Iraq. So it's pretty important. It's where the current capital of Jordan is. Not only that, but the people there had been particularly nasty to the Jewish people recently. Talk about the shaved beards incident. See 2 Samuel 10. There's also some kind of ritual where a soldier is supposed to be celibate before battle. And Uriah just thinks that he's one of the guys and feels guilty about being coddled when his buddies are roughing it on the campaign. So he doesn't do what the king asks. He doesn't do anything to help the king's cover-up because it's all about a cover-up. He only does the right thing. Now, it remains doubtful he has any idea of what is really going on. He doesn't know that his wife has been messing around with the king, or if she even had a choice. And even if he's been sleeping with the guys, you probably know the whole story, he probably doesn't have any idea what's going on. He goes back to his commander, and he delivers a sealed packet from the king to the commander, gets up the next morning, just like he always does, and goes to war. And he doesn't come home. I just don't find this story comforting at all. Of course, if you take the long view, you'll remember that this happened about 1,900 years ago, give or take, several hundred years, and that everybody involved is surely dead by now. But still, he had to experience some kind of negative feelings when he found himself abandoned in the thickest part of the fight. But that was probably not his major feeling. I mean, he was too busy fighting to feel bad. He was busy doing what he came to do, and that was fight a war. Now, he was busy fighting a battle, and he was all by himself and doing it by himself, but he was still fighting, and that's just it. Sometimes you find yourself going all alone when you really, really want to have some help. You don't stop. You have to keep going even if it's the last thing you do. So Uriah kept up the fight. He did the right thing. He suffered for it, but he did the right thing. Even though he did not survive to see the effects of what he did affect events forever. 1. He possibly fathered one of the ancestors of Jesus. Boy, you can argue about that, but it's there for you to think about. He was instrumental in a military campaign that helped guarantee the prosperity of the next generation. There's a reason why Solomon was so rich. That's because they had a good trade route to Iraq. He remains an example of a person who does the right thing no matter what the cost. He also provided unwittingly, the mother of the king who succeeded David, that is Solomon. And at the very least, he inspired King David to make some changes in his own spiritual journey. So let's read the book, the Bible. 2 Samuel 11, 1 through 15. And it came to pass, after the year was expired, at the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon, and besieged Rabbah. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in an eventide that David arose from off of his bed, and he walked upon the roof of the king's house, And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers and took her. And she came in unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned into her house. And the woman conceived and sent and told David and said, I am with child. By the way, she's in danger of dying. Because what happens to a woman who has a baby when her husband's away and can't have made her pregnant? Well, she gets stoned. And I'm not talking about smoking pot. And David sent Joab, saying, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. And when Uriah was come unto him, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. And David said to Uriah, Go down to thy house and wash thy feet. That means go have sex with your wife. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house, with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down into his house, David said unto Uriah, Comest thou not from thy journey? Why then didst thou not go down unto thine house? And Uriah said unto David, The ark, and Israel, and Judah abide in tents. And my Lord Joab, and the servants of my Lord, are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into mine house, and eat, and drink, and lie with my wife? As thou livest, and as thy soul liveth, I will not do this thing. In other words, he was going to be true to his calling, which was to be a soldier. And David said to Uriah, Tarry here also today, and tomorrow I will let thee depart. So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the morrow, and when David had called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And at even he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his Lord, but went not down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab, and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, Set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. Okay, so I find this story depressing. It's depressing, and it's tawdry, it's shoddy, it's bad. It's certainly it's certainly a part that I would leave out of the Bible if I were writing the Bible, but there it is. So, meanwhile, you yourself keep doing the right thing, and know that whatever it is you do, the results never stop. And that's my little take on Uriah. Go with God. Try to do the right thing, even if it sometimes sucks. Bye.